A boss dropped by the office to find a worker. Habil is an ordinary 26-year-old man living a regular life in Malaysia. Ever since his young age, he's been smart and intelligent and had great aspirations for life, even though he grew up in a very poor family, so poor that he often lacked the money to even buy a loaf of bread. While many others in his situation would complain about their poverty and misery, this young man decided to do something about his situation rather than whine. He set a goal for himself to spare no effort or time to make it out of poverty and get the life he wanted but was deprived of as a child. Habil studied very hard at school and always finished his years with honors. While his peers were kicking around a ball in the yard, the young man had his head buried in a book, determined to set a clear path for himself and see his horizon expand. When he finished high school, Habil got a scholarship at a prestigious university, from which he graduated with honors. At that point, all doors were open to him, and he could see the life he's worked so hard to get coming. Habil applied for a job at a progressive Malaysian company that was managed by a famous entrepreneur, Azri Walter. Even though he was quite young and inexperienced, he proved to be an efficient worker from day one. In less than 6 months after he first got the job, Habil was offered a better position with a monthly salary that was as high as 5 times his initial pay. His dream finally seemed to be within reach, as his salary was more than enough to afford the decent life he's been aspiring to. While Habil could afford almost anything he wanted, his behavior puzzled his colleagues. He cut down on expenses as much as he could. He brought lunch from home while all the other office workers went out for lunch every day. Habil didn't spend anything on himself except the bare minimum. He was trying to cut costs at every turn on food, entertainment, clothes, and anything that required money. Seen from the outside, it seemed like Habil was a model man who simply couldn't afford much. This even led people to think of him as a cheapskate. Eventually, the rumors reached the CEO. Even though Azri, the CEO, believed that everyone had the right to spend their money as they saw fit, he did not understand Habil's behavior. What could be the reason why a highly paid manager behaves this way? Once after work hours, Azri Walter returned to the office to grab some papers he'd forgotten when he left. On his way back, he noticed that the lights were still on in one of the offices. This was a little strange because normally there wouldn't be anyone in the office on a Friday night, especially not at such hour. Azri decided to check who that hard worker was and why they had to stay there that late. When he approached the office, he heard some strange sounds coming from inside. When he opened the door, he was shocked by a scene he'd never forget. I went straight to the room and opened the door. To my surprise, there was no one to be seen. I looked closer and saw a shadow under the desk. I couldn't understand what was going on, and can you imagine? I even got goosebumps. Azri wrote later. When he peeped under the table to see what was making that sound, he was taken aback. Azri saw Habil on the floor with a rice cooker next to him. "What are you doing here? What are you cooking on the floor?" he asked in the most confused tone. Habil was terrified, and that could be seen only from the look on his eyes. He did not expect to be noticed as there was usually no one there at that time. And he answered in a trembling voice, "I'm sorry for cooking rice in the office. I didn't get a chance to eat anything today. I will quickly clean everything up right now. Just don't fire me." To say that the CEO was surprised would be an understatement. He knew for sure that his employees got paid the day before, and Habil's salary allowed him not only to buy food, but even to have a meal at the most expensive restaurant in the city. Confused more than ever, he decided to get to the end of it and find out what was happening in Habil's life that made him cook rice on the office floor when he was earning decent money. The head of the company later wrote on his social media page, "We should take time to get to know our employees." Habil was not at all stingy or a cheapskate, quite the opposite. He should be a role model to many. Habil told Azri his story, and that clarified everything going on. "My father died when I was 19. Before that, we weren't rich, but there was always enough food. Love and understanding reigned in our home, and we were brought up to be content with what we have. But after Dad died, we began to starve because he was the only breadwinner in the family. I tried to help my mother in every possible way. Even in my student years, I had a part-time job which brought a little money home. Since then, I've been providing not only for myself, but also for my mother and 3 younger brothers. Habil told in a cracking voice. He continued, they still go to school and they need new clothes, and in general, I don't want them to be lacking in things. They are still kids and I am like a father to them, and although my mother doesn't want to accept this help from me, I can see that she is having a hard time coping on her own. The young man was actually sending his mother more than half of his monthly salary for a few years to ensure she and his brothers had a decent living. Habil used the rest of his money to pay for food and a small room he rented, while his mother and brothers lived in a faraway town. I am grateful to her for giving me life and a happy childhood. I am grateful to her for her love and care, for always believing in me and supporting me. As long as I have arms and legs, I will not allow my family to want for anything. I wish you'd see my younger brothers. Each of them has his personality. Although they are not making money yet, they try to help out our mother with housework. I want to be a real role model for them, Habil continued. Right there standing in the small office room, I could hardly hold back tears. I was so proud of him. Asri later wrote, Habil said that while most people think that parents should help their children and respond to their needs, they should also take care of their parents, as there will come a time when things turn the other way around and it's the children's turn to help. Habil's words touched his boss very much, and he was incredibly moved by the young man's life story. I told Habil that everything would be okay and invited him for a delicious dinner. Habil initially refused, but his boss managed to convince him. They went to a cafe near the city center, and when the young man picked up the menu, he looked at the prices and hesitated to order. Of course, I noticed his embarrassment, and so I told him not to worry about the price because I would pay for everything. But Habil still chose the less expensive food, said Asri. That Friday night, Asri and Habil had a long and deep conversation. This young man has made his way in life, but instead of wasting all his money on expensive things and brand new phones, he eats rice and sends all of his earnings to his mother and brothers to make sure they get the life he couldn't. Isn't that worthy of respect? Asri wrote, every employer needs such employees because they will never let you down and will always be grateful to you. That is why I decided to help him, and now I'm thinking of promoting him. Parents give us a lot, but unfortunately, this understanding comes only over the years and not to everyone. Asri continued, today we consider ourselves smart and independent, but we were once helpless babies. Be sure to thank your mother from time to time for her hardworking hands, sincere conversations, and the ability to forgive. Say thank you to your dad for his wisdom, guidance, and admonitions. Looking at this young man, I realized that I had completely forgotten about my parents whom I rarely visit this weekend. Habil's selfless act and one mean rumor made the CEO of a big company rethink his entire values and rebond with the family he has swayed away from.